Yo guys, welcome back to Grid Spotlight, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the following topics: my informed drivers from the past 3 Grand Prix, the rise of Renault, the Sebastian Vettel penalty from the Canadian Grand Prix, and are Ferrari back to challenge Mercedes for a title fight? With that out of the way, let's get straight into the video. So obviously the Canadian Grand Prix just passed yesterday, and oh boy was it a great race. But before we talk about the Canadian Grand Prix, which will be related to pretty much all these topics today, let's talk about my informed drivers. Now previously in yesterday's video I said that I was going to be doing informed drivers before every weekend, so every Grand Prix weekend preview I was going to be talking about my informed drivers. So basically just drivers that are informed and have been performing well, that goes off consistency, fastest laps, positions in the race, qualifying, just how they handle the race in general, you know, just the overall persona of a driver and how they handle themselves and how good they are at delivering on track and just how consistent they are. So that being said, let's get straight into my informed drivers. So my first one is pretty obvious, and that is Lewis Hamilton. Now, despite him technically being in net second place in the Canadian Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton hasn't finished outside the top 2 since Mexico last year. And I gotta say, Lewis Hamilton is performing excellently this season, either finishing first or second in every single race. And even if Sebastian Vettel did not get that penalty in the Canadian Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton still would have finished second. So it's fair to say he is in form right now. Lewis Hamilton is at the peak of his life and at the peak of his career. He definitely deserves an in form for me. The next one I'm going to go with is Max Verstappen. Now obviously Canadian Grand Prix wasn't such a fantastic race for the Dutchman, but to recover a unlucky qualifying, should we put it like that, to 5th place is quite good. Max even said in an interview that even if he did start on the second row of a grid, because we know Max Verstappen definitely had the potential to start 3rd in this race, he even said that even if he started 3rd, he didn't have the pace to keep up with the Mercedes and the Ferrari, and he still thinks he would have finished 5th. He knew he had the pace to overtake the Renaults and stay in front of his teammate, and that was about it. Max said the best place for him was probably 5th, no matter where he started. The third informed driver that I'm going to be going with is going to be Daniel Kvyat. Now, Daniel Kvyat over the last 3 Grand Prix has been so good. We know he delivered in Spain, and the Toro Rosso team in general had a very, very good race in Monaco. And obviously in Canada, where it looked unlikely that Toro Rosso were going to score any points at all, Daniel Kvyat came home to score 1 point for the team, which looked very unlikely given, you know, qualifying and just their overall pace this weekend. Canada was a tough weekend for Toro Rosso, but they came away with 1 point, which I think they will take. And Daniel Kvyat is definitely performing right now. My fourth and final informed driver that I'm going to be pulling out today is Carlos Sainz. Despite finishing 11th in the Canadian Grand Prix and could have scored 2 points finishing 9th, Carlos Sainz overall this season, just this season alone, not just over the past 3 races but the entire season, has been very consistent, scoring points and getting McLaren up there. Sainz is also a big part of why McLaren have had big success in the Constructors' Championship above the other midfield teams in this World Championship so far. So overall, I think Carlos Sainz just had an unlucky day at Canada. Obviously, we know he was on that one-stop strategy, so his tyres probably weren't as good as Kvyat and Stroll's coming to the latter half of the race, where he was unfortunately overtaken. Still, it was a good race for Carlos Sainz, finishing 11th. I don't think that's the worst result he could have got. He definitely could have finished way down the order, possibly behind, you know, maybe a Racing Point or an Alfa Romeo. So he did alright given his circumstances. That being said, those are my 4 informed drivers. As of now, I will be adding some more later on when we get to France. So with that being said, let's get on to my second topic, which is the rise of Renault. So as we do know, Renault have had a really tough start to the season. They were expected to be pretty much like a Red Bull kind of team this season. Obviously, as we do know, Red Bull have kind of been in the position where they haven't had enough pace to challenge the Ferrari or the Mercedes, unless it was on an occasion, but they've also been really far ahead of the midfield, so they've kind of been in their own league. Now, the same goes for Renault this season, or how they were predicted to be. They were predicted to be way ahead of the midfield, but also, you know, quite far off Red Bull in 3rd place. But they were also predicted to maybe challenge Red Bull a little bit this season. But that hasn't been shown until Canada, where Daniel Ricciardo got the excellent 4th place in qualifying, despite, I guess, obviously Max Verstappen not making it into Q3, and obviously Pierre Gasly struggling, I guess. But they consistently showed this pace throughout the race as well. I thought, obviously, we're going to see Valtteri Bottas, Max Verstappen, potentially Pierre Gasly get ahead of the Renaults today and stay there. And we're going to see the Renaults finish 7th and 8th, probably, Maybe we might see them get overtaken by a few other cars, maybe the McLarens, if Norris stayed in the race. But no, they continually showed their pace throughout the race, and they continued to consistently deliver. And I thought that was very, very good. We even saw an excellent battle between Ricciardo and Bottas halfway through the race. Honestly, Daniel Ricciardo showing what he can do, even if he's in a piece of machinery which isn't as good as Valtteri Bottas. Ricciardo's shown what he can do, and Nico Hülkenberg managing that gearbox issue as well. So we know Renault hasn't been too good on the reliability, but today they've shown that, they can do it, and just with a little bit of luck and, a little bit of, driver consistency, car consistency, reliability, they've got it all. They've got the full package to be a force to be reckoned with in a couple of years when come the 2021 regulations. They've shown that that's exactly what they were promising at the start of the season. This is the sort of pace we want to see from Renault, and I hope they keep this up for the rest of the season. Do I think they will keep it up for the rest of the season? I am not so sure. I think they're still going to have an up and down season. I reckon there's still going to be races where they're right at the bottom of the midfield, but there's also going to be races where they're right there with Red Bull, or, just a little bit below Red Bull. AKA ahead of Pierre Gasly, not ahead of Max Verstappen, but, ahead of Pierre Gasly. I think they're going to have races like that. But anyway, with that being said, that is it for that topic, Do you think Renault are going to be on the rise this season? Do you think this is the Kickstarter to their season that they need to, get that, car that they've solely desired for so long and, take the fight to Red Bull? Tell me what you think in the comments below. So let's talk about the big controversial point of today's video, and this is probably the topic that's going to take up the most time. The Sebastian Vettel penalty, man. What were the FIA thinking here? The stewards, what are they doing? So obviously, as we do know, Sebastian Vettel left the track, rejoined, tried to correct the car, and then Lewis Hamilton was trying to get past him. He was squeezed off the track and almost into the wall, and they avoided a collision. I've got to say, kudos to those two drivers. If it was any other drivers other than Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton, I could have seen a crash there. I would have seen a crash there. I reckon there would have been a crash. But because it's Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, potentially two of the best drivers on the grid, if not the two best drivers on the grid right now, I gotta say, I think there would have been a crash. So these two drivers are so good, and, man, there was no crash, and I'm glad there wasn't. That would have completely thrown the race away. Obviously, it would have probably made it more interesting, but, we really wanted to see Sebastian Vettel win. But unfortunately, the stewards gave Sebastian Vettel a 5-second time penalty for apparently rejoining the track dangerously and forcing another driver off the track. And that obviously being Lewis Hamilton. He had all 4 wheels off the track, and Sebastian Vettel squeezed him into the wall. Now, the stewards claim, according to a article by Autosport, so, take this with a grain of salt, this might not be true, but it's an alright source, I trust Autosport. But here's the thing, apparently Sebastian Vettel purposely squeezed Lewis Hamilton into the wall so he could maintain his first place. Now, if that was the case, and that was obvious, penalty deserved, right? Sebastian Vettel can't squeeze Lewis Hamilton up against the wall like that if he makes a mistake off the track. That's unfair. That's wrong of him. We saw a similar thing with Barrichello and Schumacher in the 2010 Hungarian Grand Prix, and that was wrong then. I'm pretty sure Michael Schumacher got reprimanded for that, and Sebastian Vettel would as well, but I don't think that's the case. Obviously, we know Sebastian Vettel was trying to correct when he came onto the track. Apparently, the stewards have said that, that was not right. Sebastian Vettel could have stayed left once he got back onto the track. Apparently, he still had control of the car. Apparently, he wasn't correcting anymore. And I personally don't think that's true. Obviously, the stewards probably know best, but I'm pretty sure, according to the fandom and pretty much all F1 fans, we all agree that Sebastian Vettel was just trying to correct the car. Sebastian even said he had grass on the tyres. It would have been slippy. He already had to try and make a correction going into the corner, into turn 3, but then obviously messing it up, going over the grass, over turn 4, and then coming back on the track and correcting, and, that ultimately almost put him in the wall, and Sebastian even said he was lucky not to crash the car in the first place, let alone take out Hamilton. So, I mean, I personally think it was very, very harsh from the FIA. But according to the rules, the official rule book that the FIA have handed out for Formula 1, it is in the rule book that was the penalty. I'm on the fence with this one. I'm 50-50, It was a penalty. According to the rule book, it was a penalty. But I'm also, on Sebastian's side with that, it was very harsh. Sebastian couldn't have done anything about it. It was out of control. So that is just my opinion and where I stand on this. I'm very 50-50. But if not, I'm more tipped towards Sebastian. I'm a massive Lewis Hamilton fan, don't get me wrong. I am a Lewis Hamilton fan, but I'm tipped more towards Sebastian Vettel purely because I'd rather see an entertaining season and battles between the Ferrari and the Mercedes than just Hamilton and Mercedes running away with it. As much as the Hamilton fan I am, I'd rather see entertainment. And personally, if Sebastian Vettel didn't get that penalty, we would have seen a fantastic battle between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel. But unfortunately, we didn't get that because Hamilton, obviously with the knowledge that Sebastian had a 5-second penalty, he didn't have to overtake. But if Sebastian didn't have the 5-second penalty, then I'm sure Lewis would have dived on down the inside or gone for it at some point, and that would have been an epic battle that we would have loved to see. But unfortunately, the stewards took that from us, and I really do think the FIA have to reconsider the rules when it comes to Formula 1, because this rule, although, I guess, Sebastian has to be reprimanded for it because, they have to be consistent. I do think it's a little bit harsh. I think they do need to go over the rules. This is motor racing, You can't put 20 cars on the track and expect them not to have incidents. This is a non-contact sport, yes, but you can't put 20 cars on a track and expect them not to have incidents like that. And some incidents should just be racing incidents, and I think this should have been a racing incident. I don't think this should have been any more than that. Sebastian didn't intentionally do it, and that is just where I stand with it. So personally, yeah, I get that it's a rule, but once again, Sebastian couldn't have done anything. So, tell me what you guys think in the comments below. This is a very, very interesting topic. I don't know what to think about it. But with that being said, let's get on to the final topic of today's video, which is, are Ferrari back? Now, obviously, Ferrari have been, very, very, I don't know, they've been in a very, very weird place this season. Obviously, Bahrain, they were well ahead of the Mercedes and really showing that preseason testing pace that, they promised. But then going into China, Baku, they were all right in qualifying. Leclerc looked like he was set to take pole position. But after that, they've just been nowhere, especially in Monaco. They weren't really anywhere there. Sebastian Vettel getting lucky with that second place. Unfortunately, Max Verstappen got a penalty. And then in Canada, they come to Canada, and boom, they're once again the fastest car. But that is due to that power, the Canada being a power track and that back straight that Ferrari, apparently, according to Mercedes, gained 7/10 over Mercedes. Personally, I don't believe it's that much, but I mean, Ferrari really do have the straight line speed this year. Like, Mercedes in the turbo hybrid era has always been the one for the straight line speed, but Ferrari this year have absolutely triumphed over the straight line speed. They just don't have the downforce now. They need to, concentrate on getting it through those corners, which Mercedes seem to be very strong at, and that's where they gained their time in Canada, and that's why they were so equal, because Mercedes through Sector 1 and 2 were a little bit faster than Ferrari, and then Ferrari were just extremely quick in Sector 3, and that's where they got all their time from. So, are Ferrari back? Personally, I'm going to say no. It's going to be, once again, like I said, for Renault, an up and down season for Ferrari. Around some tracks, I can see them being strong around Monza. I can see them being strong around Mexico. I can see them being strong around any power track that, has a lot of straights. I think they'll be very, very strong around Mexico and Monza. Personally, if there's going to be any more tracks, potentially Belgium, but I think some of them long swooping corners, the fast ones are really going to hurt them, and I think will favour Mercedes. France might also be a track where, Ferrari might be very close to Mercedes, but once again, that Sector 3 in France is very twisty, so I do think that Mercedes will have the edge on them in Sector 3 in France. So I think France will be very close between the two teams. Monza will be close. I think Mexico will be close, but obviously we know Red Bull is strong around there as well. So we're just going to have to see what happens. And obviously Red Bull with that new Honda engine that looks extremely quick, I feel like we could see, Red Bull, powering down that straight at Mexico as well. So they might be even faster there this year. But anyway, with that being said, I do think that, Ferrari aren't going to be back just yet. I feel like they need to kind of balance out their car a bit. They need to balance downforce with straight line speed. And that's what Mercedes have done perfectly, if not more towards the downforce. And, Ferrari need to balance that. They need to get their car sorted. Their car suits tracks like Canada, and they're ahead of Mercedes, only by a little bit though, so they've got to really sort that out. But with that being said, that is today's video. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below about these topics. I'm very intrigued to hear what you guys say. Do you think Ferrari are back? I personally think no, but do you think, they'll make improvements throughout the season? What do you think about the Seb penalty? Was it deserved? Was it not deserved? I personally think no. Do you think Renault are back? Do you think Renault are going to consistently score, like the same amount of ish points throughout the season, disincluding retirements and such, like Canada? Do you think that my informed drivers are fairly given out, or would you give anyone else an informed driver? I don't know, tell me in the comments below. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.